Let's start by talking about all of the different commandlets that exist to work with PS drives. In fact, there are a couple of different types of commandlets that exist. We are going to start by looking at the ones that use the noun item, or have the noun item in them. In this table, you're going to see quite a few commandlets. I've marked a few of them in bold. Those are going to be the primary ones that you will find yourself working with. Let's go through those now. If you use copy-item, it's going to copy the specified item or items from one location to another. If you use get-child item, it's going to retrieve child items from the parent. If you run move-item, it will move an item or specified items to a new location. If you use new-item, it will create a new item. If you use remove-item, it will delete an item, and rename-item will rename the item. These may sound fairly generic, and they are meant to sound fairly generic, because this isn't related to a specific file. This could be a registry entry, or it could be a file, or it could even be a SQL Server database entry. It's going to depend on which PS provider and PS drive you are accessing and using these commands against. The next one we're going to look at are going to be the item content commandlets, or the content commandlets. Notice that I only have one of those marked in bold here. That is because I find myself not modifying the contents of files or items within PowerShell that frequently, and you may want to use other commands on this slide. The main one that I marked in bold is get-content. I like to use this one when I'm working with text documents to see what the content of a specific file is. On this next slide, we're going to look at the item property commandlets. You will notice that there's quite a few item property commandlets that exist. There are just a select few that are marked in bold, including clear-item property, which will delete the value of the property, but not the property itself. New-item property, which will create a new item property. Remove item property, which will delete the property and its values. And set-item property, which will update the properties of an item. Again, these are very vague sounding. However, they will make more sense once we get into the next sublesson. There is also location commandlets. You will use this one way more than you thought. Get location is going to show you where you are currently working from. Set location is going to change your current working directory. I personally like to use aliases for set location, including cd, which is going to change the current place I am working in on the file system. We'll take a look at that in the demonstration coming up. We also have the path commandlets. I don't use many of the path commandlets myself. However, you may have a need for these. You will find that I did mark in bold the test path commandlet, and that is really good to see if a file or an item itself actually exists before you run a certain process against it. Now that we've reviewed all of the different commandlets that exist, let's go ahead and let's jump into a demonstration on managing files, certificates, and the registry. We are currently located on the DC1 server, and we are going to open up Windows PowerShell. The first thing I want to do is type get-location. And you are going to see it'll tell me that I'm currently under the C Users Administrators folder. That may be useful depending on how your console is built and if it is showing the path or not. If you need to write this into a script, that can be very useful to see where you are currently executing your code at. The next command I want you to take a look at is set-location. With set-location, I can specify the path that I want to be navigating under, which in this example, we're going to go under our posh folder. Now, I'm currently located in the posh folder, as you can see here on the left side. Maybe I was wrong and I actually need to go back to the root of my C drive. Instead of typing out set-location and specifying the path, I can actually use cd, which is an alias for set location, and I can use a period, which represents I want to go back one folder. And you will notice that I am now located under the C drive. But you know what? I actually want to be under the posh folder, so let's go ahead and run set location again. But this time, instead of typing out the full path, I am going to specify a period, which represents the current location that I am in, backslash, and then type posh. And you will notice that I am now under that directory. I could have shortened that command further by typing cd space period backslash posh. Now that we are under our posh folder, let's create a new item. So let's use the new item commandlet, and specify a name for this item. We are going to call it newFile.txt. And we also need to specify what type of item this is going to be. We're going to create a file, and we need to set a value to it. The value that we're going to use is going to be test file content. And you will see that it has now created a new file called newFile.txt under my current location. Let's type another command to modify the content that is in that file. Let's type add-content, and we have to specify the path. That path being the newFile.txt, and the value is going to be appended to the current content of that file. We're going to just say just a bit more and press enter. Notice that it did not put any output to the screen after it executed that command. So let's check and see if it is actually there. We will run a get content and specify the newFile.txt. And you will now see test file content just a bit more, just like I had added in the previous command. Let's rename this item that we just created. So let's execute a rename-item. And this time we need to specify the path of newFile.txt, and we need to provide a new name for it. Let's just call it newName.txt. Again, it does not return any output to the screen, so how do we know that it actually executed? We can type a command called get-child-item, which will list all of the items within the current item. When we run that, you're going to notice that it's going to list multiple directories and also a few files that I had in there before. Notice that we do not have a newFile.txt, but we do have a newName.txt, which means that it did successfully rename the file. We can take this a step further to see what is actually in that file without opening it in Notepad. So let's run get-content on the newFile.txt. And you will see we have not modified the content, so you will see that it is still the same. Let's now go modify that content. We will type set-content and specify the path, which is going to be the newName.txt. We then want to specify the value. That value is going to be some new content. And we will run it. You will notice that it does not put anything out to the screen, so let's get the content of that file again, and you will now see that instead of appending it to the current content, it completely overwrote the content of that file. Now that we've worked with the file system PS provider and the C PS drive, let's work with a new PS drive. So we're going to CD, which is the alias for set location, to the cert drive. And you will now see on the bottom left here that it no longer says that I'm under the C posh directory. It now says I'm under cert. It looks just like the file system does, except I am actually within the registry. So let's do ls. ls is an alias for get-child-item. You can also use dir or type out the full command get-child-item. They all perform the exact same action. Now that we know we are under the certificate store, let's go ahead and let's browse this a little bit further. I know I want to go under the current user, under root. Now that I'm under the root of the certificate store, let's do a get-child-item. So we are now able to modify the certificates that are in the certificate store. Let's take a look at the remove-item commandlet, and we can specify the path. We're just going to be able to tab complete to whichever one we want instead of typing out one of those really long thumbprints of a certificate. Now, I don't actually want to delete any of the certificates in my certificate store, so there is a very cool parameter that I can use to test and see what will occur. It is the what if parameter. This is going to tell me if I'm going to be making a horrible mistake by deleting something by telling me exactly what the command is going to do. This is great to double check and see how you are doing your work and to see if you could have potentially done some harm to your system. I strongly encourage that you use the what if parameter whenever you are making a large change to your computer system. This will give you the ability to double check your work before actually executing it. If you would like to import new certificates to your certificate store, it does require some additional scripting, which we will not be covering in this lesson. There are some custom functions that people have written to perform this action if you look online, However, it is not available in the actual PowerShell core functionality. Now that we have modified the file system and the certificate store, let's take a look at our registry. So I am going to cd to HKLM, which is my HKey local machine, and I actually know I want to go under Software and under Microsoft. I just navigated to the Microsoft key within my registry. Let's create a new item in my registry. We are going to name this item Test so that we know we can remove it after we are done. Notice how it created it without me specifying what type of item it should be. Now, to verify that that item was created, we can do something such as ls to list all the content, but that may be a little overwhelming to our screen unless we do a specific select, which we are not going to cover currently and we will look at later to limit what is shown on our screen. So let's go ahead and let's just cd to the test key. Notice that there are a couple of keys that start with T, so I had to tab a few times. Now that I am under the new test key, let's create a new item property in this registry key. We will use the new item property commandlet, and the path is going to be our current directory, which is what the period / represent. The name is going to be test string because we are going to create a string. The value is going to be this is a test, and the type is going to be string. Now with registry entries, you can do different types of item properties. We are going to just explore the string type currently. So now that we've created that, we can go ahead and run a get-item property with the current path. And we will see that it shows this is a test string with the PS child item of test. The next thing we want to do is go back. Because you do not normally want to make modifications to your registry and leave them there unless they are necessary, let's go ahead and clean up from what we just did. So let's run the remove-item commandlet, and we're just going to remove the entire test registry key. And now, if we try to cd to test, you will notice that it does not exist. I can tab through and it is not there.